get by. It resides between my eyes. Walk through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I'm here with Andrew Gottlieb, notypicalmoments.com. Andrew, before I formally introduce you, I always like to mention some past episodes of the podcast people should check out. And I did one with, actually two, with Jason Swank, who talked about how he built his agency up to 8 figures and sold it. And then another one was how he's been buying agencies and how he evaluates them and everything like that. So check that one out. A good friend, Ian Garlic, talks about the best ways you should be creating case stories and using case stories in video for your company. So check out that one. He also talks about how his dad owned a restaurant that had live dolphins in it. So that was kind of an interesting story. He kind of learned, how do you differentiate your business from other businesses? Well, that's one way to do it, I guess. That and many more on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream 100 relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. So for me, we're an easy button for people to launch and run a podcast. And Andrew has a podcast too, which we'll talk about. For me, Andrew, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way to do that over the past decade than to profile the people and companies I most admire and profile and feature them on what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com and email us. We're happy to answer anything that you have. I'm excited to introduce Andrew Gottlieb. He's founder and CEO at No Typical Moments. He's a digital marketing agency. They work exclusively with purpose-driven, social impact-focused businesses, and they help a lot with people of online education businesses as well. They've been around for over a decade. So he's going to talk about his journey over the past decade, because I know there's milestones, there's also challenges along the way. And his company acts as a CMO. They do execution, build out of media campaigns from online education. They do media buying, campaigns across Facebook, Instagram, Google, LinkedIn, YouTube. They do back-end email marketing solutions, and they basically help you scale your message. And they do this of some of the top world's thought leaders. So Andrew, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me today.
So just talk a little bit about No Typical Moments and what you do in a little more in depth.
Sure. So the best way I can explain it is there's 2 parts of the organization. People come to us at the onset and work with one of our fractional CEOs to get clear on what is your next best step in digital. And I say that because in my opinion, before iOS 14 and the tech challenges we saw within Facebook ads, an easy answer a lot of times was just do Facebook ads. It's going to generate revenue like you're just snapping your finger. The game has changed, and I think it's much more important to get clear of where business is at and their maturity and direct them down that path. And if and when an organization is ready to bring in our execution team, we help organizations with anything, like you mentioned, from media buying on Facebook, Instagram, Google, YouTube, LinkedIn, really any major platform, copy, design, landing page, sales pages, email marketing, tech integration. And that individual as that chief marketing officer is really there to protect your bottom line. So they can also help find other vendors, if that makes more sense, manage current vendor relationships, manage your employees, contractors, whatever that looks like, as if they really were that CMO inside your business.
And Andrew, we'll talk about the journey, right? Starting in your bedroom to over 20 staff and over the past decade. How did you get started in this 10 years ago?
So it was a little over 10 years. So when I was a senior in college, like a lot of students, that would have been fall of 2010, I was applying for any and all jobs I could apply for. The thing though with me is that I got rejected from every single job I applied for. I didn't even have a, hey, here's the job. I could, reject it and feel good about myself, just straight up rejections. And I started to go through a lot of just self-reflection of why this was happening, because I had all the internships, I had a strong GPA, I was on the soccer team, extracurriculars, like name it, I was doing it in college. And in that process, I just stumbled across this chain email in which I was directed to view this new podcast show. And this guy was talking about how he was living on the beach in Costa Rica, making six figures. And just that concept was so out of the box and nothing I'd heard of in my entire life. I was just fascinated with reverse engineering. What the heck was this guy doing that have that type of life? And from there, I started to realize how much I actually enjoyed marketing, new technology, and trying to turn this into a more purpose-driven twist of how could I use this to advance the missions and messages of purpose-driven businesses. And if you think back to 2010, I mean, this is when people still liked Mark Zuckerberg. So the idea of Facebook was this new hot thing people are up to over a decade ago.
Do you remember the podcast that you were listening to at
It
the time?
was David Garland.
Oh yeah, David Simon Garland. Yeah, I know.
That's it. Yeah, I thought there was something before Garland.
Right.
I don't even know if he's doing that podcast anymore. I think he's in softball or something.
Exactly. I will have to give him a shout out to send him a message that you inspired his journey in business. So appreciate that. Yeah, I think it looks like he was knee deep in just dominating the softball scene right now. So did your background, because I know you majored in managerial economics, did that help you with what you were going to be doing in, kind of across Facebook and paid ad campaigns and everything?
Yes and no. So when I say yes and no is there's one professor in particular who really changed the trajectory of my career. His name is Chris Allison. He was a former CEO of this company he took public called Tollgrade. He I'm sure made a lot of money when he exited that business, and now is a professor at numerous colleges in the Pittsburgh area. And he specifically taught some entrepreneurship and econ classes. And what I learned from him was very tangible with how I parlayed that into No Typical Moments, future career. I mean, he canceled last second to get coffee in November when I was back in Pittsburgh, but he's still that impactful in my life. And I was just on campus last April, and being able to be in the same room as him and hear him speak intelligently about P&L statements, go-to-market strategies, all that stuff, I still just shut up and listened to him over a decade since graduating. So I'd say that was super relevant. There's always going to be those random econ college courses you took, and 10 years later, you're like, why did I need that geology course? That made no sense. So I'd say it definitely taught me how to think, how to be a good public speaker. I was an average writer, and I think I graduated as a pretty solid writer after college.
Who are some of the other mentors? You have some distant mentors with podcasts. I don't know if there's any of those throughout the years that have really influenced you. And then you said Chris Allen. Who else has influenced you?
Well, my fiance calls them my man crushes. And I kind of go in phases of who those people might be. So Gary Vaynerchuk, back when I started No Typical Moments, was a huge just driving force in getting into this. I didn't listen to him for years on end for no particular reason. And last year, my Spotify Wrapped made it very evident that Gary Vaynerchuk was my personality of the year. So he's, a mentor from afar. What we were speaking about before you hit record, Jesse Itzler has been a big voice for me. And him, it's more of just how to live a holistically awesome life, which is why I'm in his program, Build Your Life Resume. And then I would say the other individual that's coming up for me is the leader of the mastermind group I'm a part of in San Diego. His name's Tom Deverell. It's a CEO peer-to-peer group, and I've been in that for, I want to say, 6 or 7 years, and he's been the leader in those groups, and it's been very supportive for me of how to become a CEO, to speak plainly about it.
What made you decide to join Build Your Life's Resume? I know I've listened to two of Jesse's books. I don't know how many he has, but the Living with the Seal, and I think it was Living with the Monks or something like that.
Right.
And both phenomenal. I loved them. What made you decide to join Build Your Life's Resume?
So just to clarify, I don't even know how he differentiates all these things. So I technically just have his big calendar. I didn't pay for the full package. So I'm in the program that might be too logistical. I'm also in his other program called All Day Running Company. And I mentioned this, and it will make sense why I'm kind of differentiating these two brands. Is I've known and have listened and followed Jesse for a bunch of years. For whatever reason, this fall, I started to get super dialed into what he's all about. And I think that was because I see him as a man as I step into this next evolution of my life of getting married. Kids will be in the future of someone I can really look to for guidance who's, 100 yards ahead of me in all dimensions of life. In that process, he posted a message one day for this all day running company of this beta group in which you would get, free access, like all these things in a 2-week trial period. And I jumped on it instantaneously and was a part of his beta group. And the amount of positive momentum I had in my life through just one call with Jesse carried me for the next week. And so as he, ended the year and a lot of his programs are kind of in the new year, new you vibe, I just thought, okay, if that one call with Jesse made that big of an impact, if I had 12 months of being in his energy and everything I can learn from him, I think it's a no-brainer to take advantage of all these things he has that also have a really great track record of changing people's lives to jump on it and see how it just elevates me as a human being in 2023. And the amount of time I spend in Spotify trying to find just hidden podcast episodes from his from 3 years ago, it made a lot of sense of I spend that amount of time just listening to him. Why would I not want to be a part of these things and just dive a little bit deeper with him?
Yeah. Well, I'll have to find a friend, Ed O'Keefe, had him on his podcast. So I'll have to find that. Shout out to Ed.
That name sounds familiar.
Yeah.
That has
if you
to have
haven't
been a
listened,
one.
yeah, if you haven't listened to it, I'll send you the link, or we'll link it up here for Ed O'Keefe and Jesse Itzler. What is there anything that sticks out from advice when you talk directly to him from his program that you kind of took to heart?
Do you want me to show the calendar?
Sure. Yeah. Bring it. Yeah.
Is this going to
pull it out? Yeah. Well, it's going to be on video. So, but if you're listening to audio, I would hop over to the YouTube video because Andrew's going to pull out his, we'll see what it is. Big calendar. So let's check it out.
I say this because it will make more sense. So I didn't realize.
Never been seen before.
I didn't realize how visual I was until
that is a big calendar.
It's huge. And so you'll see these colors I have throughout it. And I'm not even fully done with the process of mapping out 2023. But what it showed me is I need to create space and time in my life for the important things that aren't on your typical resume. For instance, being in Zoom meetings for 7 hours a day, it pushes the needle of where my business is going. But in 10 years from now, I'm not going to remember any Zoom calls I did in February of 2023. It's just going to be this
except for this one. I'll remember this one. We've documented this.
And so as just I have more on my plate with responsibilities with work, getting engaged, kids in the future, this is really me taking control of this area of my life of I want to still create epic moments and experiences with the people that matter to me. So, and I'll give 2 examples of things that I'm carving out this year. So far, I only have it built until my wedding in July. So the first one is going to be getting married in July of 2023. The second one is something I've wanted to do since childhood, and my bachelor party will be at WrestleMania this year.
Wow.
Which, and I don't drink. I don't party, so I didn't want a bachelor party looking like that. I just thought, like, what could I do that I would just have the most childlike fun nonstop for a weekend? And WrestleMania is going to be in LA. I've lived in San Diego, and it's just,
You a big
it's gonna be at
wrestling fan?
WrestleMania.
Have you always been a big wrestling fan then?
As a kid, I loved it, as that was the Rock and Stone Cold era. I've watched it on again, off again, probably since like freshman year of high school until now. I will admit, I watch WrestleMania every single year and the Royal Rumble. I'll like look on Twitter, Tuesday mornings to see what happened. I'm not as active as, having to watch every Monday night, but definitely like those two pay-per-views I love.
That's
Are
awesome.
you a fan?
Yeah, I mean, the Hulk Hogan Ultimate Warrior days, and shout out to a friend, Colt Cabana, who is big in the wrestling. He
has a big podcast.
Yeah, so he's a friend and he's been on the show before, and he's changed the name and kind of the format, but he had the Art of Wrestling, and it was one of the top podcasts for a long time in that genre niche. So yeah, that's awesome. I love it. But also, you didn't mention pro soccer team related activities.
Yes. So as you asked that question, and now I'm remembering the question you asked a few before, kind of why did I join Build Your Life Resume? So this is kind of all connected here. So I was on my binge listening of Jesse Itzler episodes, just search his name in Spotify, find 5 episodes, just add them to my new episodes and kind of backlog them. And this was one of the first times I heard his messaging around all these goals and putting stuff on your calendar that really matters, and reverse engineering, how much longer do you have to do X, Y, and Z. So for him, he was giving the example of like, I don't have that much longer to be climbing Mount Washington. There's not many 80-year-olds atop there. And I had this really crystal clear realization of how much longer do I have playing soccer at a level that I feel proud of. Like, I'm sure at 50 years old, I could be kicking around, but I don't know the last time I've ever heard of a 50-year-old trying out for a pro soccer team. So I was just on this high of wanting to do something inspirational, something that scared me. And the Oakland Roots, the team I'm trying out for, is actually a client of our marketing agency. And it was just kind of like all the dots were aligning, and I was like, trying out for the Oakland Roots, that is something that scares me. I'm going to do it. And I happened to have a check-in call with their CMO a few days later. And I said to him, like, hey, I don't want any favor points because you're a marketing agency and whatnot, but is it cool if I go to your trial?
Well, I may turn your ads off if I don't make the team. No,
and he was like, yeah, if you could play 100%, go to the tryout. I'm all for that. And so there's kind of that level, and also is a pretty competitive bidding process to even get selected as their marketing agency. So in kind of an egotistical way, like in my mind, I really love this client in that deal. And it's kind of like, I dare another marketing agency founder to try out for that team. Like, let's go toe to toe if he wants to steal that enough. And it's very much for me, like I said before we hit record, the chances of me making it are 0.000% chance. I'm not going to move to Oakland in that 0.0001% chance I make it. It's much more about setting a big, scary goal and going through that process and what I learned through that experience.
I'd love to, talk about some of the milestones or maybe ups and downs starting. We talked about starting in your bedroom.
Sure.
What was maybe one of the first big milestones and first big challenges you had when starting the business? Because you mentioned like you couldn't get a job somewhere, and so you decided to start your own company.
Let me fill in one gap there. So that was fall of 2010 when I was applying. I kept on applying for a while longer. So spring of 2011 is when I started to listen to David's podcasts, and I had this idea of I would build No Typical Moments one day into the future. So it took me 18 months of just working on in the nights and weekends until that dream came to reality. And I had a lot of odd end jobs during that time. I volunteered in New York City at an internship program. I came back to Pittsburgh. I had a few more internships. I worked game day operations for the Steelers. I finally found a full-time job at a minor league baseball team in December, what had been December 2011. But then September 2012 was when I went into the business. And the first big milestone was finding our first paying client. So as I left that job, I said, okay, I have 6 months worth of savings. And in 6 months, if I can't replicate my income, this was not meant to be, and I'll find another job. But I need this 6 months of just going all in, figuring this out. So within 90 days, I want to say it was almost 90 days to a T. It was right before Christmas. We found our first paying client. And that was just such a confidence booster too. I was just in endless coffee meetings, sales meetings, trying to get someone to sign us up as a client. And finally, someone came through. And it really started to snowball from there with new clients coming on board. And kind of our first big break then would have been August of 2014. I think that timing was, or 13. I think August 2013 is when I met Lisa Nichols' team at Bali at an event called Awesomeness Fest, doing yoga with them. And one thing led to another and started to run their first Facebook advertising campaign that fall.
The first client, what was the service that you were doing for them?
That was with that individual I mentioned. And I hate saying I don't remember his name. It was, I don't want to say it, but I'm just talking it loud. Yeah. Okay.
You don't have to mention names, but like, what, I'm just curious because, I find that services that you offer evolve. So I'm wondering what that first service was that you did.
Way back then, we were doing organic social media marketing. So this was Twitter and LinkedIn, organic social media content and community management for this individual.
Got it. And then Lisa Nichols, what kind of, at the time when you first started working with them, what kind of services did you do?
So if you fast forward to that contract, that was Facebook advertising.
Okay. And then that relationship evolved and you did more than just Facebook advertising over the years?
So the way this evolved was that it was initially organic social media marketing. As I said, that 18-month gap, I was building up my skill set and finding random free projects I could take on. And that was all organic social media marketing. What I started to realize is when I was in these sales meetings is there wasn't a clear ROI back then of you're going to update my Facebook and Twitter feed, what's this going to do for revenue for my business? And it was really hard to make that case back then when social media wasn't what it is today, when everyone knows they need it. So what I realized was if we did paid advertising, is that would be a very black and white conversation. If you spend this amount comes back to you in revenue. So there's a much cleaner business case as to why you should hire us. So from Lisa Nichols, roughly until 2021, when iOS 14 happened, Facebook ads was pretty much our only service offering. It was working. Facebook was just skyrocketing as a business. Everyone needed it. Wasn't really thinking about diversifying outside of that. And we would take on projects here or there with other services, but it wasn't something we're necessarily relying on. If we looked at our portfolio, 95% of them were doing just Facebook ads with us. And when iOS 14 happened, how deep and techie do you want me to get, or just keep it high level?
Go for it.
I'll just keep it high level. In one sentence, iOS 14 made Facebook advertising very challenging. So, and a lot of our clients were pulling out of Facebook ads. If they weren't pulling out, their return on investment was starting to diminish pretty quickly. And what we had been planning for many months before that was that we were going to have a well-rounded agency with a plethora of services you could dive into. So what we had said was we're now going to do YouTube advertising, Google advertising, LinkedIn advertising, really hitting on all major mediums. And I took another step back and I said, okay, not only do we need to be doing that, but I don't even know if a lot of these clients even should be advertising in the first place. What they really need is thought leadership and someone to be owning the strategic direction of their marketing campaign. So let's take another bird's eye view and go, okay, let's actually find a staff of fractional chief marketing officers who can be pointing them in the right direction, setting them up for success, that when we actually run these advertising campaigns, they're going to work and not fail.
You know, I guess some of these moments, a lot of different type of moments, force companies and people to pivot, right? Mm-hmm. Even stuff that they were thinking about, and probably COVID, this happened with COVID, people were probably thinking of doing something for a long time, and it almost forced people's hands in pivoting, right? Mm-hmm. So when that happened, that obviously, caused big changes in your company. What do you go to the clients and say at that point?
I know what I want to say, but what I said to them was, hey, I think right now is a good moment to start diversifying your lead generation source, because if everything's tied up in the world of Facebook and Zuck, you're going to have some issues moving forward. And I think that was finally the moment, because we had been trying to tell clients for years to get out of Facebook, and people would always just shut it down and just say, Facebook's working, why change this? And I think it was just the storm of not only iOS 14, there was all the issues from Cambridge Analytica, all the bad press with Zuck, the PR of Facebook took a very sharp turn towards negativity, when it was for the longest time just like, the best thing since sliced bread. And so I was able to make a much better business case to clients then of the importance of diversifying off of Facebook into other lead gen sources. And I mean, there's other examples of clients who were spending millions of dollars per day, and all of a sudden Facebook bans their account. I know the e-com business in San Diego that happened to, friendly with the CEO, just out of nowhere, Facebook banned them with no reason, no recourse. So they out of necessity had to ramp up Google and YouTube to get to $1 million in ad spend, when they were resisting that for years because Facebook was so profitable for them.
Totally. It makes sense. I mean, you have a limited amount of time and resources. Mm-hmm. You want to spend it on what's making the biggest impact. And, it's kind of like a golden handcuffs, right? It's like, well, we know we should be doing this, but this is working so well. Why even go that route? So the first major milestone, you get your first client, 90 days. How do you decide what to charge that person?
I just threw out numbers and hope they work. Back then, there was nothing more than, maybe I talked to a few other agency owners and mentors of what I should charge. And it was just simply just saying a number and seeing if they said yes or no. There wasn't much else of a thought process behind that.
Yeah. I mean, you probably, it sounded like you gauged a couple other companies to see what they were doing, but in the end, what was the next major milestone? Yeah, go ahead.
And I can say back then, I was more so thinking of this in terms of, this was my revenue at the baseball team, or my income at the baseball team. What do I need to do to replicate that? And it was only, it was a very low paying job. It was only $1,500 a month was my salary plus commission. So in my mind, I was thinking, okay, I need to sell 3 $500 packages per month, and I'll be good. It'll replicate that same income level. So that was more of my thought process.
Yeah. Like I need to get to, so I could just continue to do this. And right. Yeah. So what was the next major milestone after the first plan?
I would say that would have been Lisa Nichols, which was August of 2013. Right around then, I met an individual named Danny, who started working with me at No Typical Moments. If he's listening to this, I'm sorry, Danny, I don't remember our anniversary date. We're still working together 9 years later or so. And we became a much more powerful force when I had someone else besides me to not only tag team sales meetings, but then also in client work. Him starting to take on more of the client work versus me needing to do anything and everything of the business. His wife, Brittany, who's also still working with us, joined maybe like 6 months or so after that to add another layer to our team and being able to start to scale the number of clients we could be working with. And then I would say shortly after that, our next big account was the Pittsburgh Marathon. So I'd say those 3 moments were probably our capstone milestones in the first 2 or 3 years in business.
I want to get to Pittsburgh Marathon for a second, but with Danny, what was his expertise?
Sales.
And
he had some digital marketing experience. Mainly his digital marketing experiences was a result of building a SaaS business. And so in building that user base, he got the lay of the land of what was needed to grow audiences and bring in revenue for businesses.
So Pittsburgh Marathon, how do you get a client like that?
Luck. So the way that it happened was the Pittsburgh Marathon also now compared to where it was at way back then is kind of 2 different worlds. They're a very well-established brand. They were still new-ish back in 2014 or so. There's an individual, his name is Don Marinelli. He wasn't the mentor that I mentioned earlier, but he's been a very positive force in my life for a lot of years. And he's been a family friend for a long time. He was a professor at Carnegie Mellon. And he really took me under his wing when I just got started. And any chance he could, he made introductions for me to influential people in the Pittsburgh area. One of them being the Pittsburgh Marathon, shared with them what I did, why they should hire me, and how I'd make a positive impact in their organic social media campaigns. And yeah, I had a few meetings with his CEO and got hired to work with them on their organic social media plan leading up to the marathon, and then actually being there the entire weekend in what really was like a war zone. So through that process, there were a lot of other members added to that digital team for actual race day. So we had a room we were in for 12 hours a day, and we would be scanning Twitter, engaging and commenting with every single individual who made any mention of running Pittsburgh Marathon. We were even there monitoring security threats in case we saw anything like, hey, there's a package on Fifth Avenue. Someone should check it out. So it was very hands-on all day, the entire day. Then we had people actually on the ground taking photos and videos, sending them back to us, needing to splice, edit, distribute them out to all the channels too. So it was I want to say there's probably a dozen people in that Twitter kind of war zone all weekend long for us.
That's amazing. I love it. What was the next milestone? So after you work with the Pittsburgh Marathon, what's next?
I'm glad you're asking me this, because I haven't thought through this in a long time. I would say we were a part of a app project called KindWorks right around this time. So when I said we had done some random services that might not have been Facebook ads, this was a project in which we actually were helping advise on the strategy of what this app would look like, which the idea of it was to create the world's largest pay it forward platform. So you could log into the app, upload a good deed you did, and then inspire others to do subsequent good deeds. So we came in kind of a strategy role, just kind of to lay out what this would look like from a user experience standpoint. We then sourced and hired the tech vendor to build this app, manage that whole process. Then we were the marketing team to bring it to market.
At what point do you see a big challenge occurs in the business? I mean, initially, you don't have as much to lose. It's you in a bedroom. And at some point, you just keep building and you get to a point where you're surpassing what you'd be making at another job, which is kind of the goal, right? What were a couple of the big challenges that you faced up to this point?
In the early onset?
It could be early, or it could be later on as well?
Let me give you early, medium, current. So I would say at the very early onset, it was a very mental battle. And I say that because as a 22-year-old, all your friends are in grad school, they have high-paying banking jobs, they're going to be lawyers, doctors, all of that. It's this very clear trajectory of just follow this formula and you'll spit out and you'll, be in the career, make six figures and whatnot. I was entering the land of the just unknown of what was going to happen. And there weren't many people in my immediate social circle who embarked upon that type of career trajectory. So in those early days, especially, it was a combination of, I want to say, kind of the shame and embarrassment of not having that clear trajectory of what was going on with my life. There was just the confidence of, are you actually going to be able to do this? Are you going to replicate your income in 6 months, or kind of tuck your tail between your legs and find another job and whatever thing you can do and kind of start at ground zero? And then I would say 3 would have been just I would say the shame and embarrassment of having no money. Not like I'm sitting here today as a billionaire, but I remember specifically not even wanting to go on dates because it was very much the decision of go on a date or have money for my business. And back then it was a very clear, like, I can't go on $100 date right now, as I need that $100 just to get me by with the early creation of this organization. So that was at the very, very early onset. I would say if you flash forward another couple of years, some of the challenges I would be experiencing is when it evolved beyond me to needing to hire people. Danny and Brittany, I got very lucky with because they're amazing and they're still working with me, and absolutely no complaints between the two of those. Fantastic people. We made a series of really terrible hires as we were in those growing pains of how do you hire, how do you fire, like what are the expectations when someone comes here to work, and letting go of control of I'm not the one handling the client relationship in the day-to-day capacity. I'm not running the media buying campaign, and having that trust fragmented of people not working out and ruining some relationships for me. So that was a very hard process in kind of the middle ground when I was really trying to grow a business beyond me. And then I would say right now, in the last couple of years, the challenge has been continuing to find that fire to grow and build 10 years in. So we, and also added to that, 2020 was, 2019, we had a huge staffing turnover. 2020 was COVID. 2021 was iOS 14. And it was 3 years of just a lot of uncertainty and turbulence. 2022 was very much, my theme was we weathered these storms for 3 years. It's time to grow. And kind of, I don't want to say kind of, needing to reinvent for 3 years in a row of who we are as a business and coming out just firing in 2022 to capitalize on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Hearing that, it's like, man, I'd be like, let's throw in the towel. I mean, everyone is probably feeling that stress. Most people anyways, who had a business, is like, these are crazy times, one after the other, and reinvention was definitely needed. Thanks for sharing that and being so open with that, Andrew, because I can relate, and I'm sure other people can relate as well. I'd love to highlight and give people a greater understanding about what you do. And I know one of the campaigns you work on was a high-ticket campaign, and it went from 200,000. They spent 200,000 revenue, and I'll let you kind of finish the story on what you did and what ended up happening.
Sure. So, like I shared before we hit record, I wanted to give 2 very different examples of client success and some projects we did in 2022, because going back to my thesis is a lot of our fractional CMOs are there to figure out what your next best step is in digital, which doesn't look the same for every business for numerous different factors. So this organization came to us as a multi-seven-figure business. They had huge email databases. They had run Facebook campaigns for years on end. So they had tons of data. And they came to us wanting to sell a high ticket offer, which means it was anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 in pricing, depending on what you opted into. So we actually did Facebook, Google, and YouTube advertising campaign for them. We spent collectively a little over $200,000, generated over $800K in revenue for the business. There's numerous steps kind of in between, but at a high level, that's what we produced for this organization. And once again, I don't recommend going straight to an ad spend at that level. This worked for them because they had actually spent this level and beyond in prior launches. So they were very comfortable with this level of ad spend. A different example of a client, is it okay if I jump into that one too? Is a client who has a documentary. He had created, it's been his baby, he's worked on for numerous years, but he had not generated revenue for it before. So what we said to him when you're starting to test an offer is Facebook ads are kind of the last resort. Let's work on testing this offer with your existing audience. Let's find some affiliates. And once we have clear data, we can go to Facebook ads way down the line. So he had minimal community to market to, but he has an awesome documentary and found some affiliates to mail for him and do some live webinars with their community. So what happened was we wanted a proof concept with some of these affiliates and these relationships that he had cultivated to show, if you mail for me, this is the revenue you're going to earn as a business. It's a very clear, pitch deck we send to affiliates, just saying you have an email database at this size. If you mail to these people based upon our earnings per click, this is what you're going to expect back in revenue. So we developed enough of these little mini case studies over 2022 that we eventually were able to enroll a client with an 800,000 person database with his exact avatar to mail for him. And the reason they were okay with this is, well, they also made the introduction to our business at the onset, so they were familiar with this gentleman. But it was a very clear equation to tap into, that if you send one email, this is the projected revenue that your business will make.
I love that, you talking about proof of concept, even though you probably could have been like, listen, let's start testing audiences on these paid ad channels. If you deliver it to people and they don't buy it, well, a person cold hearing it for the first time is not going to buy it. So I love how you started with that approach and then proved the concept and then kept building those mini case stories. And then now, as you hone in on it, then you can drive cold traffic to it.
Right. So that's going to be part of the 2023 planning, is introducing paid ads. And I'm very just grateful for him that he listened to our guidance, is at the end of the day, we're refusing money from you. Like, we're essentially saying, don't pay us what will be probably 10 times the amount of agency fees to hire us to run your advertising. Let's just figure out, do you even have a product market fit to begin with?
I'd love to just walk through really quickly at a high level. Let's take the high ticket campaign for a second. Walk people through kind of what happens from the customer journey, right? So they hit, there's a lot of stuff that happens, but you create a YouTube ad or Google ad. Then they click on that and just walk through where people go at a high level. So from there, they go to a landing page, I imagine. Take me through the customer journey of that high ticket campaign.
Sure. I don't remember their exact customer journey flow, so let me just share kind of high level what will go on. So at the price point they had, it's going to necessitate a sales call too. On the other end with that documentary, which is a suggested donation of $20 to $100, he doesn't need to jump on and sell that every single time. It's not worth his effort. And that that price point also can be a much more of a spontaneous purchase. So with that high ticket offer, we did ads into a challenge. I think it was a 10-day challenge. Threw in also some subsequent webinars as well, with call to actions eventually leading to booking a sales meeting with a rep from their team to sell that offer. Now, like I said, that is very high level. I don't remember the exact breakdown of every step in the funnel, but what I'll say is when you have a high ticket offer is it's going to require a lot more touch points, and it's going to require someone actually jumping on the phone with someone to speak about that purchase.
Yeah, totally. I mean, each one of those, there's a slew of things that need to happen. You take the ad, the challenge, the webinar, the sales call. I mean, there's copy, there's emails that are going out, there's videos, there's a lot of things that go into that. But no, that allows me to see kind of at a high level, here's kind of the different piece, it gets passed along in. Well, first of all, Andrew, I want to be the first one to thank you. This is fantastic. Thanks for sharing your journey. I want to point people to notypicalmoments.com. There are any other places online that people should check out. I know people can go to the podcast page on notypicalmoments.com and check out the podcast. Are there any other places we should point people to?
You could friend me on LinkedIn. I think you friend people on LinkedIn. I think that's the right term. If you just find Andrew Gottlieb, maybe add in No Typical Moments as well. It would direct you to me versus the dozens of other Andrew Gottliebs out there.
Check it out and check out more episodes of the podcast. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.